Just when it felt like the season was over after 4 straight losses, Iowa State turns it around and finds a way to get the dub over TCU.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Nick Marvitz. Thank you for making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Or in this case, first watch or listen post-game as Iowa State gets the dub over TCU. Been a few weeks since we've been able to say that, and boy, does it feel good. We're going to be breaking down what happened in this game over the next 30 minutes or so. Specifically, in the first segment, we're going to talk about the biggest factor. All right, a lot of things went well for Iowa State today. A lot of things went in Iowa State's favor, but I've got a big 3 specifically that I think helped move the needle, and we're going to determine which one was the biggest factor to Iowa State getting this win. Second segment, we're going to talk about Rocco Becht. A lot of conversation on the inter-Twitters, the Twitter webs, about whether Rocco Becht should be starting, should we play him, yada, yada, yada. Now that the game's over, all right, we have to come to a conclusion. And I'll tell you what I think in that second segment. Third segment, we're going to take a look at the outlook, all right? Where does Iowa State sit now after snapping a 4-game losing streak? We'll do that at the end of today's show. But first, we have to get into what actually happened in this win for Iowa State. Iowa State goes down to Fort Worth, takes on the Horned Frogs, and gets the W, 20-17. Boy, does that feel good. Just relish in that, kind of sit in it, soak it in for a second. Iowa State snaps the 4-game losing streak and is now a 6-win team. Feels really good, especially because TCU is a good team, and Iowa State did some things very well in this game to get this W. Specifically, the first place I want to talk, the first big point, big reason I think Iowa State won today, turnovers. Something I talked about last week on Friday, I guess it's just yesterday. I talked about, this team needs to win the turnover battle, something I generally don't talk about when it comes to keys to victory, yada, yada, yada. I thought in this case, this specific game, it was a great opportunity to actually narrow in on that because I didn't know if TCU was going to score, 45 points. Every turnover we can get is an opportunity for us to flip. It's like a 14-point swing right there. It's kind of a way to look at it. You stop TCU from scoring, and if you score, you automatically, it's like you're cashing in on some sort of like ridiculous credit card. You're like, oh, by the way, here's another 7 points. Okay. And that feels good. And I think that was necessary in this one. Now, was this the high scoring affair that we thought it might be? No, but I do think that the turnovers came at the exact right times for Iowa State. I think that was very, very important in this one. It felt like whenever Iowa State really needed a turnover, it was right there. Now, obviously, the turnover at the beginning of the game, that's a great tone setter. I didn't see it live, okay? I was busy watching the IU Penn State post-game pressers, which was riveting, okay? But Fox was taking forever to get us over to watch that, so I'll have to see that, in my rewatch. But nonetheless, that was a great way to start the game, and the next 2 turnovers came at just the right times as well. But that is kind of a super zoomed in look at this defense. Let's zoom out. My second point is the defense as a whole. As I mentioned, I thought that this might be a super high scoring affair. I thought Iowa State might have to score 30 at least points to win this game. I thought for sure TCU was going to destroy Iowa State as far as, through the secondary, through the air, and to an extent they did. Josh Hoover threw for 319 yards. We had two receivers with over 100 yards. Jordan Dwyer and Eric McAllister had 107 and 108 yards, both on 11 receptions. Both with the long of 19, too. I was starting to wonder if this was some sort of glitch on ESPN's box score. But no, it wasn't. And guess what? The crazy thing is, yeah, TCU kind of ripped us up through the air. 319 yards, 34 of 50, a touchdown. But 2 interceptions, as I mentioned, and only 17 points to show for it. Look, it's not a battle of who's able to gain more yards throughout the course of this game. It's a battle of who can have more, who can accumulate more points. And TCU going into the half only had 3. I mean, I don't know how much more you can ask for from a defense except to maybe shut them out. And they were really close to doing that. So I honestly thought this defense did everything they possibly could in this game. Okay. Now there were some calls that didn't go the Iowa State's way, but I also thought there were some calls that didn't go TCU's way. This to me just was a poorly officiated game, kind of both ways. Nonetheless, just I'm immediately thinking of the Trey Bell face mask, which I tweeted out about at Nick_Marva. I was like, he was holding maybe onto his helmet so it wouldn't get ripped off his face. Nonetheless, okay. This defense I thought played very well. All right, I thought this defense did enough, especially through the air. It's kind of like one of those bend, don't break type situations. It was honestly pretty thrilling. I'm not going to lie to you. Just knowing what Iowa State is sending out there in the secondary and still finding a way to hold TCU to 17 points. Now, obviously helped by a missed field goal for sure, and some other questionable calls, I think, personally by TCU. But nonetheless, Iowa State basically did enough in this one because they allowed their offense to basically score 13 points and get the win. That is a very good defense. Now, the reason I bring that up is because my third and final point for biggest reasons Iowa State won this game is Aiden Flora. Aiden Flora, the track star, the superstar, the lightning in a bottle punt returner does it for Iowa State on a 78-yard punt return to send Iowa State to 20 points, and they never looked back. They said, 20 points. Yeah, that's good. That's enough. We'll see you later, TCU. Aiden Flora. I mean, this is the electricity we talked about at the beginning of the season. That's why I had such high hopes for, not the only reason I had high hopes for this team, but boy, if you have an electric returner like that, it can do a lot for you. And we saw it specifically in this game, of course. Now, Aiden Flora, not a head turner of a season necessarily, spent some time out, yada, 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 comes back into this one, though, and wins Iowa State this game. So now we kind of have three major players as far as which was the biggest reason, because Aiden Flora was the go-ahead touchdown. It's pretty easy to put him at number one, but then you look at, they did have 3 turnovers. That was a major contributor to this win. But then you look at what the defense did as a whole to hold TCU to 17 points when in their last 2 games, I believe it was, they had at least 20 points by half. And I think I'm going to go with that. I think I'm going to go with the defense. I think obviously you allow 319 yards through the air. You allow 113 yards on the ground. That's over 400 yards on the day, but you still only gave up 17 points. That's a really good showing against a very good TCU team, especially considering who is being sent out there. That is a very, very good day for Iowa State's defense. I didn't have that on my bingo card at all. I tweeted out about it. I said, I did not see this coming. Iowa State's defense came to play, and I thought they played better than Iowa State's offense, honestly. Now, Iowa State still did score 13 points, but boy, did that defense come to play. Now, speaking about the offense, who's at the head of that? That's Rocco Becht. We have to talk about him coming up right here after this. Now that it's the weekend, we have to take a look back at Iowa State's win and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Iowa State, I'm going to go with Carson Hansen. 100 yards rushing yet again on 28 carries with a long of 24. Carson Hansen got behind his pads today and brought Iowa State the win. Been a while since we've been able to say that. It was hard not to pick him in this situation. Just like Hansen delivered for Iowa State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season long, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday and keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. We spent a lot of time just now talking about the defense. I mean, we didn't even talk about the offense at all in the last segment about Iowa State's win over TCU 20-17. 2 segments specifically about the defense, 1 segment on the special teams. Now we have to talk about offense. It's kind of like the elephant in the room at this point. How have we not mentioned the fact that Iowa State scored, 20 but 13 points on offense? It's like, how could you not talk about it? And it did seem that way on the internet when everyone was talking about how Rocco Becht, his time is up. Rocco Becht, we've seen enough from you, my friend. You've done great for us in the past, but what have you done for me lately? Nothing. We've seen enough. Bring Mansky in. I thought those were some crazy claims, But, to be fair, Rocco did not play very well in this game. All right, so let's talk about what Rocco did specifically in this game, and then I'll talk about how I feel about, potentially does he stick around? Does he, start another game? Whatever, yada, yada, yada. I think you can assume where my head will be at based on what I said last week. Rocco Becht went 9 of 24, 111 yards through the air with a touchdown and 2 interceptions. I'm not going to lie to you. That is a pretty poor stat line. That is not very good. 9 of 24. Do you know what the percentage is on that? I'll tell you right now. It is 37.5% through the air. That's pretty bad. That is wickedly terrible. But here's the thing. Rocco Becht didn't throw, what would that be, 15 incompletions? Is that the math on that? I think that's 15 incompletions. He didn't. He threw 5 balls at least that were right into the hands of the wide receivers that were just simply dropped. Okay? At least 5. Now, you could probably make an argument for more. You can make an argument maybe for less. It doesn't really matter. If you give Rocco Becht those 5 and basically give him now 14 completions out of 24, his percentage jumps up significantly to 58%. Now, is this some 19 of 20 game? No. But if you just give Rocco 5 balls back that he put in a good spot, his completion jumps up to 58%. All right, let's keep that in mind. It's a very, very good supporting piece of data. The other stat line I'd like to talk about for Rocco Becht is 4 rushes for 22 yards, had a long of 25. So obviously some negative plays in there. I remember specifically one play where Rocco Becht basically got out into the open field and looked like a majestic horse gallivanting around with his mane waving in the wind. It looked like he was running in slow-mo. It was the glory days all over again. That is part of the reason I said Rocco Becht was one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 this offseason. Yes, he can throw the ball very well, okay? But when he runs, that is a new level, a new gear, a new whole basically book of possibilities for Rocco Becht. And we were able to see it a little bit in this game. And I honestly think that was kind of part of the reason that Iowa State was able to get this win. Now, I don't know if Taylor Mauser we're gonna talk about. Not today, but Monday we'll talk about. But I don't know if he saw Rocco Becht get some open field and then say, you know what, we should just run quarterback power every play. But let's not do it with Rocco. Let's bring in Mansky because Mansky did have a rush for 2 yards. I don't know. Nonetheless, we will talk about Mauser on Monday. Come back for that. Let's get back to the point of this segment. Should Rocco Becht see the bench? No. Period. It's really not that close for me. I do understand Rocco Becht did not have the most accurate day. I do understand that maybe there were some decisions that folks did not like from Rocco Becht today. Okay. But I will counter and say he got the win. When you get the win, not a lot really matters. You can get away with a lot when you're getting W's. And yes, I know that this is one win out of 4 straight losses. It's kind of like, okay, we've corrected the ship, but maybe the patterns are still there. I can hear that argument. But when we're getting W's, if these are the stat lines Rocco Becht is putting up and he's not specifically throwing games away at the end of them, and giving teams a chance, that to me would be enough to keep him at the starter. So I'm going to treat it that way. And I think Rocco Becht did enough in this game to keep Iowa State in it. Now, it wasn't pretty, okay, but did throw a touchdown, okay, and handed it off to Carson Hansen. All right, no fumbles there. The 2 interceptions, one off of the hands. I will say, not a great ball though, right? So I can see both perspectives. I can see people saying Rocco Becht still trending in the wrong direction. Yes, they got the win, but blah, blah, blah. Look at this, that, and the other. I can see why people would say that, but I don't think that's the right move. I think that this team is better off when Rocco Becht is the quarterback. Now, that, saying it that way, my brain immediately goes to the leader that he is. And at the end of this game, when it felt like Iowa State, even, when they were ahead and it was the final offensive drive, it felt like they were just like, we need a strong presence. We need someone out there who's been in this situation before. That was just the vibe to me. And that is Rocco Becht. That's the guy that doesn't really feel a ton of pressure in those situations. On the road, in a Big 12 environment against a team who is competing for a spot in the Big 12 tournament or the Big 12 title game, right? Now, obviously, this game doesn't send them there, but losing this game takes them out of it. And we talked about that last week. So this was a very big game for TCU. Down 3, end of the game. If your quarterback is in there on that field and is, hands shaking, that's not where you want to be. Rocco Becht has that experience. So, yeah, did the last drive end in points? No. Did TCU have the ball to end the game? Yeah. But did Rocco Becht, panic and throw some crazy pick? No. And that's really all you can ask for from Rocco in that situation. Just don't lose this game. And crazily enough, our defense has played ridiculously well today. Just let them seal this game. And that's essentially what happened. I was very thankful to see them keep trusting Rocco throughout this game because there was a lot of noise online. And I'm not saying that Matt Campbell's checking his Twitter and seeing what the polls are reading as far as should he keep Rocco Becht in, but I can see if there's that much noise online, how there could be noise on the sideline. There could be noise, coming from the press box. Like, hey, is it maybe time to take a look at Mansky? Like, what's the situation here? And thankfully for our defense showed up and kept this a close enough game that we didn't really have to entertain that question. I think if it was a blowout, maybe there would be some more of that conversation happening. But everyone stayed true. Everyone stayed the course and said, look, Rocco Becht's our guy. And Matt Campbell has said that probably 10,000 times. Like, we trust Rocco Becht. He can do it for us every time. They basically say he can do it every single game. And there was 4 straight where he didn't. But in this one, he did. And it feels nice that they were able to stay the course on that. And that feels like Iowa State football, right? That is right there what we talk about when we talk about like culture, and it's more than like just X's and O's, and players are more than just a number. That's really what it's about right there. So I think today we got a lot of trust built into Rocco Becht. I think Iowa State, felt that W feeling again. And I think that there is a great outlook for this team and Rocco Becht specifically. So no, I wouldn't say to bench him. I wouldn't say, let's find out what's sitting at second string. Because like I said last week, he's at second string for a reason. Rocco Becht is the starter for a reason. If he were significantly outplayed every day at practice, I don't think Rocco would be out there. And I think that Rocco Becht's experience helped Iowa State get this win over TCU. Let's pivot a little bit, talk about the outlook for Iowa State after this win, because boy, our vibe's different, and boy, does it feel good. Coming right up here after this. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. And if you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Iowa State got the win over TCU 20-17. And boy, does it feel like there is just this huge burden that's been lifted off of the shoulders of every Iowa State fan, player, and coach. 4 straight losses for the Cyclones. It was getting ugly, man. It was getting dark. And now Iowa State has turned it around and got the win. It's crazy what difference a week can make, because Iowa State goes from 5 straight wins to 4 straight losses, and now in that streak column, it's no longer an L, it's a W. Might only have a 1 next to it, but it is in fact a W. Where does Iowa State go from here? How do we feel about Iowa State after this win? Was this some weird fluky win, or are there signs in kind of in the details, in the centimeters, if you're asking Matt Campbell, that would indicate that Iowa State will have a great last few weeks of the season? Obviously, Iowa State with 2 games remaining, one with Kansas at home and the other on the road at Oklahoma State. Those 2 games have the opportunity to push Iowa State to 8 wins. And let me just say this. My outlook on Iowa State right now is that they can get to 8 wins. They can beat Kansas and they can beat Oklahoma State. This can be the year of the streaks, the win streak, the loss streak, and the win streak to end the year, right? That's what this team is capable of. Why? Well, I think that Iowa State's, going to trend in the right direction after a win like this. You feel what it's like to win again. It feels like that cloud is gone out of the sky. It's a sunny day once again. There's so much less pressure on this team. They don't have to play so tight anymore. And I'm not saying they played tight against TCU, but it feels like and this is true of any organization, any team ever, when you're losing, and really, in any organization on any level in any industry, when you're losing constantly, it's going to get stressful as far as like, do I have a position here? What's being expected of me? Am I doing that? Do I need to change what I'm doing to meet those expectations? Do I need to lock in more on this specific thing? Like, it's very easy to get tight and everyone gets really, really nervous when you're constantly losing. After a win, I think Iowa State's, let that go. And the first place to look, as we talked about in the second segment, so I'm not going to elaborate a ton, is at the quarterback position. I think Rocco Becht is now going to feel looser, is going to feel more comfortable moving forward, isn't going to feel like, every time I go out there, we lose, yada, yada, yada. It's easy to feel that way after 4 straight losses. It's easy to forget about the 5 straight at the beginning of the season. Now I think Rocco Becht can kind of like, whew, all right, here we go. And that's a good feeling. That is a very good feeling for Rocco Becht to have. The other place I looked, crazily enough, the defense. Ridiculous amount of injuries, okay? And I'm not saying it's getting any better. I'm sure the injury report next week is going to make me barf. I was going to say vomit, but barf or vomit, or bomb it, if you will, when I see it, all right? It's not going to get any better. I know that. But what Iowa State was able to do against TCU with the dudes they had, that's promising. That's a positive outlook if I have ever seen it. Ever in my life. It was ridiculous. Yes, they did give up over 400 yards of offense. I understand that. They also held TCU to 17 points. They also forced 3 turnovers. I don't know how else to look at that, man. This defense showed up today. And I've talked all season about how the defense, we're okay with just kind of throwing in the towel. And let's just go score 55 points a game. I don't know, man. Maybe the defense is the strong point of this team, despite missing. I just saw a post about it from Pete Thamels 2 days ago that he laid this out. Against TCU, Iowa State was down 6 of 11 opening day starters and 4 of 5 opening day starters in the secondary. To me, step one, or first thing we got to talk about, promising for next year, but we're not even that far, right? We're focusing just on this season. If Iowa State's able to do what they did against TCU with the personnel that they had, that I feel very, very good about where they're at. As a team, the biggest thing that I want to say is that the pressure is now off, okay? However, I will preview a little bit Monday's show. Coaching decisions still have to be sound, okay? Pressure might be off. You might, as a player, feel like you can play a little bit more loose, a little bit more free now, and I completely understand that, and I think that's totally valid. The coaches have to be putting them in the right positions, okay? I feel like, the defense had a phenomenal day, so I'm not even gonna talk on the defense right now because on my rewatch, I'll be able to pick it apart and make the kind of those critiques. The offense for me, it's like, we have to score more than 13 points a game. That is my only concern moving forward. And that's crazy because this offense it should be so good. It should be so capable. But that is the only point where I'm like, Iowa State's going to be great. I think they are now capable of winning the last 2 games on their schedule. And then the last thing that creeps in my head is like, well, what about the offense? What is Taylor Mauser doing? 13 points from Rocco Becht and co. That's the only point where I am a little apprehensive. Now, if the defense, can snag a pick 6 here and there, and Aiden Flora can rip open the punt return game like he has, and essentially the defense holds the opposition to 14 to 17 points a game, Iowa State's going to be okay. Iowa State's going to be just fine. I am not going to hope on that, but I am no longer going to disrespect the defense and say, well, we don't even have to count on them for anything anymore. We're just literally focused on the offense entirely. I'm not going to go into next week saying we need to see what we saw this last week again, but I know that they're capable of that. So outlook, I'm going to give it a B. I mean, I feel good. I don't feel great. I don't love where the offense is at. I was, obviously it felt promising to see them figure out, okay, if we run the ball, good things happen. If we run the ball with Carson Hansen, especially, we can get this thing into the end zone. It felt good to see that realization in real time, but it didn't feel so great when a couple plays, what are we doing? And I tweeted this out. I said, I feel like sometimes you can literally tell when when Taylor Mauser is like, we're going to run a play that I want to run. We've gone 2-3 drives of calling plays that make sense. Let's do something I want to do. And I love it if it works. I do. I think it's cool. It's fun. It's funky. It's fresh. It's got personality. It's great. But it needs to work. That's the thing. So that's my only apprehension. That's the only reason they're not at an A right now, which is crazy to say considering they lost 4 straight. Where is their defense at as far as injuries go? It's the longest laundry list you'll ever see, and they're still at a B, and it's because of the offense? That's just where I sit. Where do you sit? I'm very curious to see after this win. Is this a whole new Cyclones team, or are you like, well, it just kind of scraped by? I think that there were signs in this one that showed that Iowa State is capable of quite a bit. I think that they can finish this season an 8-win team when all looked over. I mean, it looked like Iowa State might not make a bowl game. And now here I am sitting saying they can get to 8 wins. I think they can. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. We're at Nick_Marv. Iowa State gets a win, 20-17. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.